I'm so excited to join you tonight as the new moderator of this great show. Today is May 7th, and here is the state of play in our nation. The Capitol insurrection took place 121 days ago. President Biden has been in office for 107 days. And even though the mob that stormed the Capitol didn't succeed in stopping Biden from taking his oath, sources often remind me the consequences of the insurrection and the false claim that the election was rigged loom large. In the meantime, Republicans in dozens and dozens of states have continued to introduce and pass laws restricting voting. Supporters of the laws say they're aimed at making voting more secure. Critics say the efforts are really about making it harder for many, including Black people and people of color, to vote. And the debate over election integrity has led to a civil war inside the GOP. In January, the party's leadership was sharply critical of former President Donald Trump, who wrongly claimed that the election was stolen. Here's how GOP leader Kevin McCarthy put it then.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. All of us must resist the temptation of further polarization.
But this week, McCarthy was caught on a hot mic saying Representative Liz Cheney, the number 3 Republican in the House, should be purged from party leadership. Why? Because she's speaking out against former President Trump's lies.
I've had it with it. I've lost confidence. Well, someone just has to bring a motion, but I assume that will probably take place.
In a Washington Post op-ed, Cheney fired back, writing, quote, "We Republicans need to stand for genuinely conservative principles and steer away from the dangerous and anti-democratic Trump cult of personality. History is watching." Joining us tonight for insight and analysis, Erin Haines, editor-at-large for the 19th, Jake Sherman, founder of Punchbowl News, a political newsletter that we're all reading, and sitting here with me live in studio, Dan Balz, chief correspondent for the Washington Post, and Weijia Jiang, senior White House correspondent for CBS News, who covers the White House with me and is a dear friend. So Erin, you are a native of Georgia and have spent a lot of time covering voting laws in that state and around the country. What's your reporting tell you about how these laws, these voting laws, could impact people's lives, but also how did we even get here in the first place?
Well, first, let me just say congratulations, my friend. It is an honor to be with you as you make your debut as moderator of Washington Week. I am thrilled to be in conversation with you tonight. Let me just say, as a native of Atlanta and as a native Georgian, this actually is not a new strategy for the Republican Party. Georgia was a pioneer in voter ID laws dating back to 2005, 2006. And there were other states that saw what Georgia did then who followed suit. And so what we're seeing now is something that has been kind of a long time coming, and what really is kind of the 21st century face of voter suppression that continues to be a solution in search of a problem. We know that this election was the safest, the most accurate in U.S. history, according to our own federal government and according to state officials in Georgia, in Florida, saying that their states had elections that were transparent, that were efficient, and that were accurate. And yet here we are, with a recount, that audit in Arizona, and with these laws being passed in Georgia and Florida. And the reason that they really are, dangerous and continue to be a threat to our democracy is because I think that we're moving into phase 2 of the big lie. Phase 1, obviously, being that President Trump continuing to claim that he wrongly won the election when we know that President Biden won and President Trump lost. But now phase 2 is really just the idea that election integrity is real and that it is a threat to our democracy. We know that that is not true because there is no proven evidence of widespread voter fraud anywhere in this country.
Weijia, I want to come to you. Erin's talking about voter suppression, but apart from these laws, there's also what's happening in Arizona with this audit. I wonder what you think of the impact is of all of this, and how is the White House and Democrats really readying themselves to push back, given the fact that they're criticizing them?
Well, there's only so much the president can do himself, and he has said very clearly, and the White House press secretary today said again that they, are very, it's obvious that these laws are meant to keep people from voting. I asked also whether the president believed that the Justice Department should intervene in any way to try to stop these laws from being implemented. And this White House has been so careful about separating the Justice Department and Attorney General Garland's power that they weren't going to weigh on that. But certainly they are aware that this is a massive fight ahead. The problem is that, sources say it's not only going to make it difficult for Democrats to vote, but for Republicans too. And so there is this risk of backfiring that they think is really something that these state officials are not thinking about clearly enough. But they are prepared for what's ahead, and they know it's going to be something that they have to struggle with.
This struggle, of course, is also connected, Jake, to what's going on in the GOP and Liz Cheney. Like I said at the beginning, we're all reading what's going on here through Punchbowl News. Tell us what's the latest. Is Liz Cheney at all going to survive this, possibly?
Well, Yamiche, I want to echo congratulations. I feel like we've been on TV together since we were young children, and here you are with your own show. No, listen, I think that I have no reporting that would suggest that Liz Cheney is going to survive this challenge next week, which is next Tuesday or next Wednesday. It could happen. We could be very surprised on Wednesday if Cheney survives. We were surprised last time. I don't believe that will be the case this time. Kevin McCarthy is against her. Steve Scalise is against her. Jim Jordan. Some of the most prominent figures in the Republican Party are for Elise Stefanik, the Republican from New York, who is challenging essentially Liz Cheney. But there's two competing visions here of the party, right? There's the Liz Cheney vision, which is that she believes that Donald Trump is a danger and she uses every opportunity that she can to talk about the lies that he's telling about January 6th and the election. And also she's unafraid to criticize her own party leadership, the leadership in which she sits. And then there's Elise Stefanik, who believes it is her job to represent the broader Republican Party, the broader House Republican Conference, which frankly is fully behind Donald Trump. So two competing visions for the party, two strategies. I think a lot of members of Congress, sitting Republicans, are with Stefanik because some of them don't care for Donald Trump. It's not all they want to be talking about, but it's a shameful episode and a strange episode for this party.
Strange is definitely one way to put it. Dan, you wrote this week in the Washington Post that the move against Cheney is a sign of political cowardice for the party. While shocking, you write, it is not surprising for a party that has lost its way. Talk to me about this moment and the history. I always ask this question, especially to veteran reporters, is there anything to compare this to?
Nothing that I've covered over many, many years here in Washington covering the Republican Party and these kinds of battles. The Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party that existed 5 years ago, certainly not 10, 15, 25 years ago. It is now Donald Trump's party. We have all talked over this spring about the battle for the soul of the Republican Party, and I think at this point Donald Trump owns the soul of the Republican Party. He owns it lock, stock, and barrel. Liz Cheney is standing up against that, but she is in a very distinct minority. There may be people who agree with her, but they're unwilling to speak out in the way she is. And so what you have is a very small minority. Liz Cheney on the one hand, Senator Mitt Romney on the other, among a handful of people who are prepared to make the argument that the party is in danger of ruining its future if it continues to buy into Trump's lies about the election. But it appears as though she's on very thin ice in the House, and as a result of that, what we have right now is a party that is Donald Trump's.
Dan's so right here, because this is a lot less about Liz Cheney than it is about Donald Trump. And that's why you're seeing the huge endorsement of Elise Stefanik, because you'll remember during the impeachment trial, she was one of the very few who was willing to go as far as she did to staunchly defend President Trump, who at that time was really his own defender-in-chief. And so I think this is another classic example of what happens when you support the former president and when you don't. It's a case of being rewarded and being punished, and that's what's playing out here.
Well, if I could, I'm going to go to what President Biden said, because this week Biden was questioned about the GOP leadership crisis. Here's what he said.
It seems as though the Republican Party is trying to identify what it stands for. And they're in the midst of a, I don't know, a revolution. They're in the midst of a revolution. And 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 they're in the midst of a significant sort of mini revolution going on in the Republican Party.
Dan, you were going to jump in. Tell me a little bit about how President Trump's hold on the GOP might impact his ability to function in the party, and also the party's function to really deal with President Biden. There's all this talk of bipartisanship. What do you make of it?
Well, I think there's two related but somewhat separate issues on that. In terms of former President Trump, the party is focused on trying to win back control of the House and maybe the Senate in 2022. That's why they are upset with Liz Cheney, because they think she is taking them back to an old fight, and they want to move past that, whether they buy into what Donald Trump has said or not. But Trump has made it very clear that he's going to continue to be active within the party. He's rare among presidents in that he gets involved in intra-party fights, and that's clearly what he's going to do. And most Republicans don't want to be on the wrong side of that, so they are with Trump and therefore against Cheney. How that will affect the legislative agenda of President Biden is not yet clear. There are signs that there are going to be decent negotiations over the American Jobs Plan. I don't think we know enough about how serious those are yet, but there's a possibility that those will end up being somewhat compartmentalized. But right now, the Cheney, if you will, Cheney-McCarthy battle and the Cheney-Trump battle is overwhelming everything else within the Republican Party.
And Dan's talking about, Dan's talking about all of this overwhelming everything. I'm really interested in the idea that Joni Ernst, she's a senator, a Republican woman in the Senate. She came to the defense of Liz Cheney. What does that tell you? And what does it tell you that maybe possibly going after Liz Cheney, how could that impact the GOP's relationship with its women voters?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly that is something that we are interested in over at 19th News. One thing that was interesting, that we've reported is that, even as Liz Cheney was embattled, she had a record fundraising quarter last quarter, after, her colleague Matt Gaetz goes to Wyoming and tells her constituents to vote her out of office. And instead they respond by, donating millions of dollars to her campaign. And so this could be something we know that there were women voters, especially conservative women, that we talked to, in the 2020 campaign, who maybe were turned off by former President Trump's rhetoric, but were not necessarily turned off by his agenda. And so it is clear, kind of where women voters will come down. But I think it is clear that just because President Trump is out of office, that does not mean that he is out of power. Yeah. And how it plays into the 2022 cycle, I think will be a test of his power and continued hold over this party. But because he is the standard bearer, those who are not going to carry that standard are being targeted.